today we're going to flip the coin a little bit and we're going to delve a little bit into what can go right with your marriage and what you might be able to do to save it. As a divorce attorney, I spend a lot of time seeing marriages that the parties have decided are never going to work and there's nothing that we can do about it, and this is too late. But I'm super excited to have with me today Haley Pettigrew. Haley is, among other things, a marriage counselor, and her job frequently is to help people save their marriage and decide what they can do about it. So, Haley, welcome. I appreciate so much your coming to the program. I wanted to just go over a little bit about your background. So, you have your own practice, right? And it is called The Purposeful Healing. Is that right?
Now, Sam, that is right.
Why did you pick that name?
Because I do believe in intentionality. I think that we cannot heal just because we want to heal. I believe we have to be purposeful in it. We have to, a lot of people come to counseling and just kind of want this magic fairy dust sprinkled on them. They want to come a couple of times and feel better. And honestly, that's not the reality of change in life, right? And so it was really important for me to be honest and intentional about what I called my practice, and that it takes purpose, it takes intention, it takes time, it takes effort.
So tell me a little bit about your experience. You are a licensed marriage and family therapist, right?
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, technically, it just means that I went and I got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I got it from Texas Tech University. Go Red Raiders. And then I passed the licensure exam in Texas, the marriage and family therapy licensure exam. So technically, that's what it means. My training included everything from working with individuals all the way through full families. My training was pretty cool and pretty different in the sense that the school that I went to did a lot of active in-person training. Some programs are not like that. They'll kind of teach you about theories and teach you about how therapy is supposed to work, and then they send you off to internship sites, and those individuals are kind of responsible for teaching you. At Texas Tech, we had a clinic on campus with two-way mirrors. And so any individuals who came to receive counseling there knew that they were going to be observed. And so other students, faculty sit behind the two-way mirror and they watch you do therapy, basically. And so we're learning skills, we're going in, we're doing the skills with clients, and then we're getting feedback. They even had phones. So if we were doing something that they were like, whoa, 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 that's not what we want to be doing, they could call in, the faculty call in and say, hey, what you doing? And so, but it was a really cool experience because you were kind of getting in the moment training, which doesn't really happen, right? We were just talking earlier about people are not in the room with you when you're doing therapy. That just doesn't happen.
Right. I work with therapists actually quite a lot.
Yeah.
And we do it, I've talked with child custody evaluators who tend to have therapeutic licenses, or child custody supervisors, and it's not uncommon to have the children's therapist be kind of a participant, or a witness in hearings. But I think that it will surprise people how rarely I actually work with marriage counselors. Yeah. So tell me, now you do marriage counseling, right?
Yep.
And that the marriage and family therapist, that's the certification that if you want to do marriage counseling, you have to have that pretty much, right?
So technically in the state of Texas, you don't have to be a marriage and family therapist to practice couples counseling. Yes, anybody who has a counseling license of some form. There are licensed professional counselors, there's licensed social workers, there's clinical psychologists. All of them technically have the capability of seeing couples, but to my understanding anyways, and this is just my knowledge, only individuals who go through a marriage and family therapy program get in-depth training in their master's program on how to work with couples. So any other license does a lot of just traditional theory work and kind of understanding. They maybe take a class or two on human development or family dynamics, but I had class upon class upon class about how family dynamics work and various modalities for working specifically with couples. Now, there are some kind of forms of couple therapy that any of these counselors could go out and get like an additional certification in. But we are the only license that spends a good chunk of their master's program actually working on how do you work with couples.
And what kinds of things did you learn in this additional training that you would find helpful?
So I think really the biggest thing that I learned was more about systems in general, right? How two different people, a group of people actually interact with each other and influence each other. So when we're just talking about the normal development of a single person, we're missing out on how does your experience influence my experience and my influence interact with your experience. And so I think that was the biggest thing that I gained. And then on top of like, when you have a family system, right, when you have parents and children, parents have their experiences and kids are influenced by that, but they all are kind of, at least if they're kind of a family that lives in the same home together, they're experiencing similar stuff.
Yeah.
When you're talking about a couple, you're talking about two very different people that come from very different backgrounds. And so we also talked a lot about like, how does that influence? Right? How does your family system interact with my family system to create a new family system?
So when you're working with someone as a marriage counselor, there's two people there, right?
Yep.
I mean, are you essentially advocating for the marriage? Are you assisting one or the other of them? Is there any kind of conflict of interest there?
That's a good question. So my goal is to like focus on them as a unit, right? That is why they're coming in, to heal their marriage or to try to resolve some sort of conflict that's existed in their marriage. And so that is my goal. When I create goals for therapy, that's what we're talking about is how do we make this a healthy, workable unit? But that can't exist all on its own. Like we can't only look at how do you guys interact together because there's a reason why each one of them interacts the way that they do. So I do have to be aware and do a lot of assessment in the beginning on like, why do you act the way that you act? Why do you respond the way that you respond? And I have to learn some about them as individuals. And if something comes up in our discussions where it feels like, let's say the wife is super like she really needs this one thing and it doesn't make a lot of sense to the husband. He doesn't believe that it's a necessity. We're going to explore in that couple session, why is that a need for her? Where does that come from? Does it come from her family system? Does it come from her background? Does it come from her trauma? And vice versa. If the husband has a need or the other partner has a need and the wife or other partner says, you know, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't think that's relevant. That doesn't click with me. We're going to have to learn and understand where that comes from too.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
So tell me, when you say, like, for instance, the wife has a need, would that be a need like, I need to solve, know when we go to bed at night that nobody's mad at me, that, you know, we solve every argument before we go to bed? Or would that be a need like, I need for you to tell me that you love me every single day? You know?
It could be anything, right? We talk all about emotional needs, physical needs. We talk about the difference between household kind of tasks versus outside extra things. It's really a big part of my job is figuring out what is causing you a lot of distress in this marriage. Is it that your partner isn't telling you that they love you enough? Is it that your partner isn't helping to support you in day-to-day tasks? Is it that your partner isn't giving you enough physical connection? Like, what are those things that are really causing you to have resentments towards your partner, to be unwilling and unsupportive to your partner, to be distant, to not interact in a healthy way?
So one of the things that I've seen, I had another counselor tell me once that they felt like in marriage counseling, there was always a dragger and a draggy, meaning that one of the parties has decided that they really need marriage counseling, and the other party, with varying amounts of cooperation, is there for the ride. There because, well, this person wants me to be. Is that your experience as well?
So, it's difficult. It honestly feels difficult to say. I wouldn't say that is the majority of my experience. I would say that it's probably 50-50, 60-40. You do see that, right? You do see that one person, and it really varies. I think it used to a long time ago be mostly the wife dragging the husband, but it's different. I've seen it be different. But kind of a lot of this, like 40%, 50% of what I see is that both people acknowledge that there are challenges in the relationship. They acknowledge that like this is not going well, and maybe they're on different pages around how we fix that. Right. And so maybe they're not like, yes, therapy is going to be the way that we're going to fix it, but they're not totally oblivious to the fact that there are problems in the marriage.
So most of the people that come in to see you, both of them recognize, hey, we have some issues.
Yeah. Now, they may not always believe that they have issues, right? One partner might come in and say, if this one could just be better or different, then we could be better. But rarely do I have somebody come in and say, I have no idea why we're here. I just think everything is great.
Everything was fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that maybe used to happen or maybe was a myth, but that has not been my experience.
The interesting thing that you say that you've never seen that, believe it or not, I have seen that.
Wow.
As in, I've had people come in. I got served with divorce papers yesterday, and I thought we were happier than we'd ever been. Like we've been married 16 years, and I thought, wow, everything was going amazingly, and here I'm being served with divorce papers.
Yeah. So, wow. I'm sure that would be difficult. I can't imagine.
So, but you don't see that, which I think is interesting because I would have expected that some of these people who are feeling like, I'm unhappy and the spouse doesn't realize it would start by saying, things are not working out. I don't feel good. I'd really like us to go to counseling together because I've got some big problems. And that's not a dynamic that you see. They pretty much always recognize it beforehand.
So they may not fully recognize all of it, right? All the details, all the pieces, all the parts, but I almost never have a couple come in where they haven't at least said once, I'm not happy. Yeah. Before they got into my office, right? I'm unhappy, this isn't working, or they've tried to talk through problems and it didn't go well. Communication is always one of the big ticket items that people come in. We don't know how to communicate. I don't understand what they're saying. They can't respond to me appropriately. And so they'll come in and we'll start talking about it. And sometimes my job is just helping them to reframe the problem so their partner can hear it and actually understand it, right?
So can give me an example of how somebody might frame a particular problem before getting guidance and how you'd help them to phrase it.
Okay. So a lot of times it is a pretty common one is one of the partners feels like they are doing a lot of the work at home and they are trying to tell their other partner, I need more help, I'm overwhelmed. And that second partner, I'm just going to use husband and wife because it's easier that way. Typically it is a wife saying, I feel like I'm doing everything at home. I'm not getting any help. The husband is working. Maybe both of them are working, but the husband is working. And when she tries to tell him, it's more when she's reached her limit, right? She doesn't come in calmly and say, hey, I'm really overwhelmed by all the things on my plate. Can you help me with XYZ? It's like he comes home at the end of the day. She's making dinner for the kids. The dog is barking. She's exacerbated. He wants to touch her and she's like, oh, and then he's like, what's the problem? And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed. And this is no judgment to anybody. This probably happens in my own marriage sometimes, and he's like, what is happening, right?
You blow up out of nowhere.
Yeah, you're making a big deal about this. I don't understand. Why don't you just not do some of the things? And so it's not that he logically can't step back and see what's going on. It's just when it gets stated in that way, at that level of emotionality, that then it's like he needs to be defensive because he doesn't feel like he's doing something wrong, but she feels like he's doing something wrong. And so when they come into my office, first of all that stimulus is gone, right? And so I can help them first, like, let's be emotionally regulated, right? If they say something that causes your heart rate to increase or you to get angry, I can stop them immediately and say, hey, something's happening. What's happening right now? They can come back down and she can say, when I have XYZ things going on and you come in and all you want to do is touch me and I'm overwhelmed, right? Here's what I would need. Here's what would make that easier. I want to be able to give you the physical affection, but here's where I'm at and here's what I need from you. And so then they can really see the problem and talk through, okay, what do we do about that? Right?
Okay.
Or if he really believes, like, I think you're just taking on too much, then I create this space where, like, okay, let's talk about that. Do you need to do all of those things? And if you do, okay, well, husband, how can you support that? Or how can you say, I can't support this, but I can support this based on what I have going on and what my emotional energy level is, or what I have the capacity for, and really helping them to see each other, right? To hear what's actually going on, and then to really take a look and say, can I even do that? Can I even participate in this in the way that you want me to? Do I want to? What skills do I need to develop to be able to do that if I want to? And then how do we continue to make that a priority, make that a habit, make that happen? So
Now, you also provide counseling for individuals, right? Do you ever have, like, where somebody comes in as a couple and one person is just really struggling and you're like, hey, I think you would benefit from being seen personally and separately?
yes.
And would you see them in both the individual capacity and continue as a marriage counselor in that situation?
So that is kind of a tricky gray area. I have done it before. I don't typically do it very often, and I will only do it if it feels healthy and safe for both partners, right? So let's say that they come in as a couple, and I learn through just assessment that one of the partners has a significant amount of trauma from early childhood or from early relationships, and those things are being triggered every single day by a partner who wasn't involved in any of that. I will be very clear and say, hey, this is not going to go away no matter how hard you try, no matter how safe your partner is, if you don't address this trauma.
These other issues.
Right? And so, excuse me, it kind of depends on how long I've seen the couple for, and if it feels like we're going to have kind of more quick success with the individual if they keep seeing me, as long as the partner is okay. And I am very diligent about regularly checking in and saying, hey, in our couple sessions, are you still feeling like this is unbiased? Are you still feeling like this is safe and okay? And I let the individual know at the very beginning, like, if this ever becomes a problem, we have to stop one or the other. Right? There cannot be this duality where one partner starts to feel like Haley is aligned with only this one.
Yeah, and they're coming in and being double teamed, right?
Yep. And so that's why I try to be very picky about when I do it and have really upfront direct conversations about how it's going to go, how it's going to work. But because I have a specialty in terms of trauma treatment, a lot of my clients want to stay with me. And so that's why it's an option for some clinicians. And there are some couples where it's just not an option. Like, I just know from the beginning, it's going to cause problems, even if they say, no, Haley, it's going to be totally fine, just based on the dynamic. And I have to be honest with how I feel, right? What's going on for me. And if I can't be a very unbiased, fully kind of normal therapist to them, that's not going to be helpful for them. So I have to be aware of that too.
Sure. How about the other way around? So, do you have some times where a person comes in and they're seeing you for their personal reasons and they keep coming back to their marriage and their marriage relationship?
Yeah.
And you see that there's a need in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that has happened also. And those, I almost never see them as a couple. I will put them because typically I've been with the individual for a decent amount of time. And so even if I saw the other partner 3 or 4 or 5 times on their own and then brought them together, there's still this relationship that's already been built. And so it never works. But I will absolutely, if an individual is with me and they say time and time again, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with this, I will say, have you thought about marriage counseling? Have you thought about you guys going together to try to talk through some of this, right? You can keep seeing me still, and we can keep working on these skills to help you with your trauma or your regulation or whatever's going on for you. But yes, absolutely, I'll recommend that.
Do you have where people come in to see you and they're thinking that at the end of the day, you're going to say, okay, you're the problem? This person is the problem. Because I will tell you from my chair as a divorce attorney, I actually hear that quite a bit where they'll say, oh, well, so-and-so is the marriage counselor we saw. And of course, she wouldn't ever see the counselor again because she wanted the counselor to tell me it was all my fault, and they wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Or I've heard the other way around where they, oh, well, this is a marriage counselor, and we went to them and they pretty much said he was a narcissist and that, he was a terrible person. And so, of course, he quit going. How real is that? Is that people's perceptions? Is that their expectations? Do you see people coming in really looking for that? Like that's their goal. That's what they want. They want you to say, you score that touchdown, you lose
Yeah.
that point. And how does that compare to what really happens?
Yeah, yeah. So, I think everybody sees the world in the way that makes sense to them, right? And we even gravitate towards information that aligns with our narrative.
Yeah.
And so I do think that everybody comes in and they have this desire for them to feel validated in what their experience is, right? Now, I've worked with some real high conflict couples, and those individuals probably align more with this, like, you're going to come in and I want you to tell me that this person is A and I'm not, and this is the problem. But for your kind of normal run-of-the-mill basic communication, maybe we've had some infidelity couples, they just want to be heard. They don't necessarily want there to be this one person be the problem. They just want to be validated that this person is hurting them. And opposite, the other partner also wants to feel that, right? They want the counselor to say, you are valid and you are valid. Now what are we going to do about it, right?
Okay, so what about when people do approach you with that kind of issue, like there's been infidelity?
Yeah.
How often is that something that the couple can resolve and continue a relationship?
Yeah. So, and I think maybe you and I have talked about this before, but really that's hard to answer because oftentimes couples will just stop coming after an issue like
So
that.
you don't
And
know
so
what
I
happened.
don't really know what happens. But for the most part, when couples are coming to me, they're not coming to me so that I can help them get a divorce. They're coming to me so that I can help them resolve whatever the issue is. So I would honestly venture to say all of the couples that I have seen that an outcome has happened when they're still with me have stayed together after infidelity.
So that's interesting to me because I think that's something that a lot of people misunderstand. Statistically, and you and I talked about this before,
Yeah.
most couples will actually survive an affair.
Yep.
Right? Most marriages will survive an affair. And I think the statistics I saw was like 65, 70%. Right.
Yeah.
Would that be your experience or expectation as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's even higher in the couples that I've seen that have experienced it. Like I said, almost all of them. Now, I don't know if they do after the fact, but almost all of them choose to stay together.
So how about what are some of the other issues that you see people being able to successfully resolve? How about violence?
Yeah, so it depends on the kind of violence, right? When I was in my master's program, I worked on a program that we had developed around intimate partner violence and how you assess for that and how you help treat for that. And intimate partner violence lies on a pretty big spectrum, right? You have violence that most typically is what I call maybe more minor physical violence, and it's dual. It goes both ways. So it's throwing something, it's smacking somebody, it's keeping somebody from leaving a room. It's not what you see in movies, right? Where one partner is like being overly physically harmful. People are having black eyes and broken arms. Those people don't come to counseling, right? Because they don't want somebody witnessing that.
To know what's going on.
Right. And so when there is violence like that, this dual, both parties, what I consider to be minor or moderate, a lot of times those individuals will also heal and be okay, because really what's going on is that they don't know how to regulate themselves emotionally. They witnessed that growing up. It started off in their relationship because they didn't know how to handle themselves. They didn't know how to recognize, I'm reaching my limit. I need to take a break. I'm really angry and upset. I need to do something with my body. And so teaching them those skills, teaching them how to take a time out in conflict really resolves a lot of that. I mean, it's not this immediate resolution and they stop doing that, but it is very much they just need skills. They just need skills to regulate themselves, and then they can stop putting their hands on each other.
So what kind of skills are they needing?
So the biggest one is acknowledgement of what is happening, right? And so a lot of the work that I do emotional regulation wise is people recognizing what's going on in their body, right? If you think about a time where you were upset with your husband or your kids or somebody in your office and you were really in touch with what was going on in your body, you probably notice like your body is getting tense, your heart is racing, your thoughts are going a little bit faster than they normally are, your breathing is speeding up. If people can recognize that that is going on inside of their body, that is the first cue to be like, okay, something is going on here that's going to take my logical brain that helps me make good, healthy decisions, and that's going to leave, and this fight or flight response is going to come on, and I'm not going to have a whole lot of control over that.
Yeah.
And so that is the biggest skill that I try to teach every single person who comes into my offices.
See the event coming.
Yeah, is by recognizing what is happening in their body, and then also from a relationship standpoint, what are the things that he or she does that makes your body do that, right? And a lot of that comes from understanding their background, right? Whether it's something that happened early on in the marriage or something that comes from your childhood, right? There's a reason that your body reacts the way that it does. You weren't just born like that, right? You learned to react that way based on stimulus from your environment and experiences. And so if they can figure out what are my triggers, what happens in my body, and they can grab that before it gets a hold of them, then typically the best thing they can do is remove themselves, utilize some skills to regulate, bring their body back down to what I call homeostasis or level, get their thinking brain back online. Then they can go back into a conversation and say, okay, what was really happening here? What are we really trying to talk about? Because I missed that and I immediately just got angry. So if I can stay calm, then I can hear you. Then I can logically think through what is happening, right? What are we trying to resolve here? And then we can resolve it.
Yeah, I think actually you bring up a good point when you say identify what's happening with your body and how you typically react. One of the things that I have seen, because of course I talk to a lot of people about the marriages and what's going on is I see relationships that work in so many different ways. And the shocking thing to me is that the assumption that everybody has that we all agree on what's normal, right? And so people coming in, they'll say, well, obviously you're gonna yell sometimes. You're gonna have a fit.
Yeah.
And then other people who are absolutely traumatized that somebody raised their voice.
Yep.
And they'll be like, yeah, no one yells at me. This does not happen. And now I'm in an abusive relationship. And what do I do? And this is not something that happens to me. Then I have other people that they're like, oh, well, yeah, I probably screamed last night. Maybe not. Maybe it's been 2 days.
Yeah.
But it's normal and expected. And the terrible thing is, of course, where these two types of people are trying to make a relationship work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I see that a lot. And what's interesting is that a lot of couples will come in and they want me to tell them if what is going on is okay or normal.
Yeah.
Right. And I will tell them, I tell all of my clients the same thing, like normal is what you make it, right? If you guys are okay with this dynamic, who am I to say that it's wrong? Now, if there is something that is like far one way or the other, I will say in my experience, when couples come in with this issue, typically this is the outcome, right? If people are screaming and throwing things, that is going to activate something in your body that regardless of if this is normal for you or not, you're going to have a reaction to it, right? So maybe that was normal in your childhood. Maybe that has been normal in your relationship so far, but do you ever really feel good when it happens?
Yeah. And maybe that's something you've always done, but and I think people grow up thinking, some people, that that's how everybody is.
Yep.
And that if they find out that, hey, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That can be life-changing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And we've done, the courts recently have been very into trauma-informed care.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And I've gone to a number of seminars and things on that. And it very much lines up with what I've seen, where people who are in even a mildly physical relationship assume, well, first off, you get some people who are very, very ashamed and embarrassed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you get other people that assume everyone is like that.
Yeah.
And that's just what's normal. So let me ask you this. Do you think, because some people would say you and I are on different sides of
Marriage.
is that right?
Yeah.
Marriage,
Yep.
right? Where you're trying to save marriage, and I am representing people who have decided that their marriage is over.
Yeah.
Now you notice I don't say I'm trying to end marriage, because I'm not. I am trying to help people exit in the best possible way,
Right.
if they have come to the conclusion that that's where they need to be.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that all marriages should be saved?
That's a really good question. And I don't know if this is going to be the answer that you want or not, but I feel like I am not the person to decide that for couples. But as an individual clinician, I don't think that every marriage is savable. And why I say that is that there are a lot of people, and especially living in the South, there's a lot of people that believe that because we made marriage vows that no matter what happens in the walls of my home, in the confines of my marriage, that I cannot leave. And there are some really, really hard, difficult, traumatic things that happen within marriages that are just not healthy or safe for people to stay in. I will always be an advocate. If it's safe, to work on it, right? Can we have conversations about it? Can people change their behaviors? But I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, if that means that you are going to be more traumatized and have a more difficult time operating in this world, have greater mental health issues, have a harder time raising healthy children,
Maybe that marriage shouldn't continue.
maybe that marriage shouldn't continue. Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, I definitely agree with you on that. And I think I'm going to break a whole lot of social mores here. But I think that any society that has an extraordinarily low divorce rate is an indication of an unhealthy society.
Yeah.
It's an indication to me that there's a lot of repression. There's probably a lot of abuse. There's a lot of children being exposed to extraordinarily toxic situations and relationships. And there's a lot of people that feel really, really trapped.
Yeah. Well, and if I can say this piece too, times are changing and people are getting married later on in life. But when you get, I mean, we know scientifically that brains are not fully developed until 25 or 28, which means if we're getting married at 21, 22, 23, 24, we don't even know really who we are yet. Right. And so, of course, as we continue to age, we're going to change. And the things that mean something to us are going to change. Parts of our personality are probably going to change. And so what that means is that our partner is also going to change. So maybe what worked, what personalities clicked at 22 no longer click at 32. And don't just click in like, we don't get along or you're not funny anymore. But the way that you view the world is very contradictory to the way that I view the world. And what we want to do with our kids is very different. And that just creates constant conflict. And so that's why I say, yes, try to work it out. Try to find some common ground. But at the end of the day, right, it's okay for people to say we don't mesh anymore because you got together when your brains weren't even fully developed. You didn't even truly know who you were. You were just living in this world of, it feels so good to be loved and to love and to have fun until real life really comes. And now we're not aligned on this stuff anymore.
And we don't want to raise our children the same, and we don't want to live the same, and we don't want to spend our time in the same way.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe that can't be worked.
Yeah.
I will tell you that one of the things I hear, because of course I meet with people also who are really grappling with the idea of divorce and struggling with it. And part of it is definitely where you said there's a thought that I can't leave, you know. And some people feel they can't leave for religious reasons.
Yep.
Some people feel they can't leave because they just can't accept failure. They can't accept that something didn't work. Or some people feel they can't leave because their parents divorced and they thought that their parents' divorce was cataclysmic and terrible, and they made this incredible life vow that no matter what happened, it was not going to be for their children. It was not going to happen for their children. And I have seen people in all of those scenarios that decide, you know what, this marriage just isn't working.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I hear is, well, I want to stay together for my children. And sometimes I hear that after people have described, honestly, really terrible situations.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the other parent is a terrible alcoholic who, you know, gets violent and angry and spends all their time drunk. And then, you know, I will hear, well, I'm trying to, you know, stay together for the benefit of the children.
Yeah.
How much benefit is there for children staying in a relationship like that?
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, very, very little.
Right.
Right? Because we as caregivers, if we are not okay, how well are we going to do caring for our children? And I'm not talking about the can you make lunch, can you make dinner, can you like wash their clothes. I'm talking about, can you be emotionally regulated when this 5-year-old is screaming because they won't go to bed? Or are you so overwhelmed by your alcoholic partner who has just screamed at you or been gone for hours on end? Are you really going to be able to manage that 5-year-old well? Or if you didn't have the alcoholic, would, even though life was probably harder from some aspect, right? Financially, emotionally, whatever, do you have a greater capacity to help that 5-year-old during their tantrum? You know, we are given this huge responsibility as parents to be stable for them so that they can grow up and be stable. And if we have this environment existing in our marriage that doesn't allow us to be emotionally stable, what are we doing, you know?
Yeah. And I think I see too people that are married with people that honestly struggle with mental health issues
Yep.
and illnesses, and sometimes feel, well, I can't leave because I said for better or for worse or for sicker or for poorer or whatever. But I do feel like you have to look at your life and is it working and what kind of life do your children have?
Yeah.
And do you see it getting any better?
Right.
You know, and I think as parents, we absolutely have a responsibility to our children. And I know most people have heard that, you know, children who come from divorced families have a tougher time as a whole than children who come from intact families. Studies that say children from divorced households have a more difficult time with life than children from an intact family. People talk about how children from divorce have a more difficult time than children from intact families.
Right.
What I'm wondering is, how do children who come from divorced parents compare to high conflict relationships and parents that stay in very dysfunctional family relationships?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't do a lot of work with kids anymore. I have some really amazing colleagues that work with kids all the time. And I think what's more important, whether we call it divorced, intact, high conflict, low conflict, whether they're married or not, a predictor of kids being successful is emotionally stable, the ability to have healthy interactions as a parenting unit, right? So if you're married, but you have tons of conflict, you don't communicate well, you're not regulated from for your children, your kids are not going to be as well off as if you are either together and doing those things really well or divorced and doing those things really well, right? So there are some parents who they get divorced and it totally changes their ability to talk to each other, right? They are like, yeah, we can be on the same page. We text well, we exchange kids and it's good because they've taken away that like, you don't meet my needs part of the marriage, right? But then there are also divorced couples who the reason they got divorced is because it was so bad and it continues to stay bad. And so I think when we're talking about these studies, right, are you guys looking at kids from divorced families who the communication got better when divorce happened? Or it stayed exactly the same and they still have high conflict. Parents are talking bad about the other parents when the kids are at their house, right? There's no emotional stability for the kids, right? You're going to get that result no matter if they're married or not, right? And so I think that's really what's more important to think about is, what does that parenting unit look like? Right? How do they co-parent? How do they talk? How are they interacting with the kids in a healthy way as individuals and as co-parents?
When is the best time for a couple to seek out a marriage counselor?
Oh my goodness. I love this question. Before they get married? Or after?
Well, that is couples therapy, right? It's not
True. I guess I would say probably after that like honeymoon period wears off, right? So a lot of people, and I guess this kind of depends on at what point in their relationship they get married. So some people get married a year after dating. Some people don't get married until 6 years after dating, right? But when you have been together for 2 or 3 years or been married for 1 or 2 years, and that like ease of life together wears off, right? And I think if you think about your own marriage, right? If I think about mine, if we think about relationships, you reach this point and you start to say, this is not as easy and like sunshiny as it used to be. What's happening, right? Definitely before you have kids. Unless you end up like getting pregnant and you get married, right? Because kids change. I mean, you can speak to this. They change everything. Good, bad, middle, whatever, right? They change everything about how a relationship operates, or they have the capacity to change, right? And so if couples would come in when the honeymoon wears off, and it doesn't have to mean that something bad is going on, right? It can just be, okay, like marriage counselors should, and I think most of us do, have this ability to say, here are things that we see in people that are like on the brink of divorce. Let's talk about those things right now. Let me give you some real life scenarios and let's really think through, what are you going to do when this happens, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do when somebody loses their job? What are you going to do when you have a kid who has a significant issue, right? They're not this super easy, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. What are you going to do when you have multiple kids? What are you going to do when postpartum, you are not the same woman that you were before? What are you going to do when sex falls off, right? All that stuff that's not really existing in the beginning of marriage. Like, we need people asking them those questions and not just letting them be like, oh, we'll be fine. Like, we've done it this far, we're going to be fine. No, honey. And not because you're not capable, but because that's life, right? It doesn't work like that. And so we really have to talk through, what's the plan? And how are you going to stay regulated, emotionally regulated, when all of this stuff starts to come? What are you going to do?
Well, I think that one of the things that I've learned as a business owner is the importance of goals, right?
Yeah.
You need to set a goal for what am I going to do to make my business more successful or more effective, or, where do I see problems and how can they be addressed?
Yeah.
I would say the same thing is true of a marriage, right?
Yep.
Or of couples.
Yep.
If you want your marriage to succeed, it needs to be a goal and a plan, and you need to assess how is it doing every now and then, and what can you do to improve it, right?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. I see a lot of people that have an enormous amount of guilt surrounding a divorce, right?
Yeah.
That they feel terrible, they feel guilty that they didn't give their children the perfect family they wanted. They feel guilty that they were unable to keep the love of somebody that they loved, or they feel guilty that they quit caring about somebody that they'd made a commitment to. How would you suggest people deal with that? Is that guilt appropriate? Let me ask you that.
So all feelings are appropriate, right? And I talk to my clients a lot about how we don't get to pick our emotions, right? If we feel guilt, if we feel shame, if we feel anger, sadness, or even joy, we're not waking up and saying, okay, when I go talk to my kid, I'm going to feel happy. It just happens, right? And so being upset with ourselves for having a certain feeling is kind of null and void, because we don't get to decide that, right? We get to decide what we do with it. So valid, not valid, appropriate, not appropriate. I like to believe that sometimes my clients can get to a place where they can like logically talk themselves out of, do I still need to feel guilty about this? Even though I can't control it, can I logically say, should I feel guilty, or does it just feel yucky, right? Is it just this, I wish I didn't feel this way because it doesn't feel good, But in terms of what they do with that, a lot of it is just letting themselves feel it, right? You're going to have to sit in it.
There's sometimes uncomfortable feelings don't mean that you did something wrong.
They absolutely don't mean you did something wrong, right? And I think a lot of people, I see a lot of post-divorce women come in with that feeling, and that's a part of what we process is, it doesn't mean that it was a wrong choice, right? And sometimes, actually, I think a lot of times they have to walk the road a little while. And I will tell them that, right? Like in this moment, you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel shame. You're going to feel bad. And you're not going to be able to not feel that until you walk the road for a little while, until you know what it's like to drop your kids off with another person, until you know what it's like to sit in that house by yourself, until you know what it's like to maybe have a new relationship, to have your kids come back after a weekend and be okay or not be okay. We can sit here all day and speculate what this might be like, but we really don't know until we walk it. And so if you're choosing to walk it, then you're also choosing to sit in these feelings for a while to give them an opportunity to turn into something else, something that's maybe really beautiful and amazing because you feel better.
So do you think that we have the ability to decide how we're going to feel about something and focus until we have that feeling?
I don't think that we get to decide how we feel. I think we can have hopes about feeling something better, right? Like right now, I feel really awful. But I hope that I get to a place, and I'm going to do the things for myself to help me get to a place where I can be accepting and I can have joy in my life again. And I can feel supportive of my children and their journey with this divorce, right? So like, do we get to decide, can we stand in the mirror and say, Haley, every day you're going to say that you're going to be positive and you're going to say that you're going to feel better? We can, but we don't really get to decide if that happens, but we absolutely, and this is something I talk to clients about too, is what are you doing to try to be as okay as you can be, right? Are you sitting in your bed the whole weekend while they're gone? Or are you going to lunch with a girlfriend? Are you going for a walk? Are you...
There's this video I've seen on TikTok where they're, and it plays and this person's like, I feel terrible today. Why is that? I don't know. Well, have you been outside? No. Did you eat healthy? No. Did you sleep well? No. Have you had any, interactions with people? No. Did you drink your water? No. Did you,
Yeah.
And then at the, I can't figure it out either.
Yeah.
No, why would you?
Yeah. So that is kind of where I operate, is like, if we pick this path, right, whichever path we pick, we can like sit for a period of time, but then we got to move, right? Because you can't possibly expect yourself to feel anything different if you're doing the same thing all the time.
That's very good. So did you know, by the way, there is a law in the books that a judge can order a couple filing for divorce to go to marriage counseling?
I think you told me that.
Yeah. And I will tell you, I've been doing this 30 years. I have seen it requested 3 times.
Wow.
I have seen it ordered. Never. Not a single time. Do you think that that's a useful law?
Do I think that that's a useful law? No. I could sit there for a second.
Support judges saying, you know what? I kind of think that the two of you would be good together. You're ordered to go see Haley Pettigrew and see if you can work it out.
Yeah, no. The suggestion, the recommendation, absolutely, right? Like, hey, I think this could help, right? Based on all the couples that have sat in front of me as a judge or an attorney, like, you guys aren't so far off based on what I see in front of me that maybe that could help, right? But just like we were talking about earlier, right? When one person is forced to go and they do not want to be there, that is just a waste of time and money, right? And it just is a continuation of making this other partner feel like you're not worth it. Which is just going to create more trauma, which is just more stuff for people to work on. And sometimes I feel like when people are at that point, really at that point, not like split decision, I'm angry at you, so I want a divorce point, but like, this has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Let's not drag it out any longer.
Get it, pull off the Band-Aid.
Yep. Because this is something else I tell couples too, right? Nothing's final until we're dead, which is maybe morbid, right? But like, you see on TikTok, you see in the world people that get divorced and then get back together. Like, if you're meant to be together,
I have seen that happen.
like, then God, the universe, whatever you believe is going to bring you back together. But if you're sitting in this place of like, we've been working for years and nothing is different, and our kids have all these behavioral problems, and we've spent $100,000 on divorce attorneys and not done it, and that, like, what are we doing? You wonder why you're so depressed and you're so upset and you're struggling so much because you're living in limbo. You're living in this place because you're afraid or feel guilty or whatever, right? Nothing is final until it's final, really final, right?
5-minute warning real quick, just because we are over an hour and she said she does need to go.
No, that's okay. I would just say, do you have any final tips that you could give people that maybe are would like their marriage to be better, about a few things that they could do to improve it?
So I think my biggest, probably 2 things, right? If you would like your marriage to be better and you want to do something to improve it, sit down either individually or together and say, what do I want it to look like? What does it look like right now? And what do I want it to look like? And kind of like you were talking about these goals, right?
Right.
If we don't actually know where we want to go, we have no idea how to get there, right? If I want my business to do X, but I don't know how to get there, or if I don't know what I want, but I know I want $1 million, but I don't know how to do that, what am I doing, right? I'm just living in this like dreamland.
Right.
So that would be one. And the other one is whether you do some self-exploration on the internet, you take a quiz, you talk to somebody, like really looking at your own behavior and saying, like if you take some scenario that's existing in your marriage and you really take a second to sit and say, how am I influencing this? Good, bad, or otherwise, what am I behaviorally doing to make this what it is? Right? So first is just like the biggest part of any kind of counseling. The first piece of change is awareness. Like if we don't even know that we're influencing something, we can't possibly do anything to make it different, right? But a lot of people, they come in and they're like, if she would stop doing this, if he would stop doing this. And my job is to say relationships are two-sided. So whether or not he or she is doing this, you are responding in some way. You're initiating or you're responding in some way. Look at that. Look at your actions.
And that's really very empowering, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I will tell you, one of the things that stands out to me when somebody wants to say everything where I am sucks and it's all somebody else's fault. It's also a way of saying, I can't fix it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So as soon as you recognize there are things I do to contribute, you're saying, I have power here. I have the ability to change it.
Yeah.
Well, Haley, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.